The probe drifted through space like a tiny metal seed. It had traveled for 47 years from a small blue planet called Earth. Its makers had hoped someone would find it. They got their wish, but not the way they expected. Admiral Zexter watched a strange object on his ship's main screen. His long purple fingers tapped against the control panel as he studied the primitive device. The probe was crude compared to Zephyrian technology. It used old chemical rockets and simple electronics. But it carried something interesting, a golden record with sounds and pictures from its home world. "What do you make of this, science officer?" Zexter asked. Officer Velinara moved closer to the screen. Her silver eyes glowed as she scanned the data. The species calls themselves humans. They live on the third planet of a yellow star system. Our long-range scans show they number about 8 billion. Zexter nodded. 8 billion was a decent population for a servant species. The Zephyrian Empire always needed more workers for their mining colonies. "Are they advanced?" he asked. Velinara pulled up more information. "No, Admiral. They are quite primitive. They still use projectile weapons and chemical fuels. Most shocking of all, they fight constantly among themselves. We have observed over 200 separate conflicts happening right now on their planet." The Admiral's eyes widened. Fighting among their own kind was a sign of a very low species. Advanced races like the Zephyrians had moved beyond such behavior thousands of years ago. They damaged their own environment too, Velinara continued. They poison their air and water. They destroy forests and kill other species for food. They are clearly driven by base emotions like fear and greed. Zexter stood up from his command chair. His tall frame cast a shadow across the bridge. Like all Zephyrians, he was nearly 8 feet tall, with smooth purple skin and 4 arms. His people had evolved past the need for violence centuries ago. "Send this data to the High Council," he ordered. "Mark the system for pacification. Level 3 protocol should be sufficient." Velinara looked surprised. "Level 3, sir? That's usually reserved for the most primitive species." "Look at the evidence," Zexter said, pointing at the screen showing Earth. "They fight each other constantly. They destroy their own world. They have barely left their home planet. These humans are clearly not advanced enough to pose any threat to the Empire." The data reached the High Council on Zephyr Prime 3 days later. The council chamber was a massive crystal dome that could hold 10,000 beings. But today, only the 12 highest leaders of the Empire were present. They had ruled over 847 star systems for over 3,000 years. Emperor Vexthalen sat on his throne made from compressed starlight. His ancient face showed the wisdom of someone who had lived for over 800 years. Around him, the other council members studied the report about humanity. "Another primitive species," said Councillor Dexmirin. "How tedious. Their technology level is similar to the Karathi when we first encountered them." "Yes, but the Karathi at least had united under one government," replied Councillor Yenthara. "These humans are split into nearly 200 different nations. They cannot even cooperate with their own species." Emperor Vexthalen accessed the visual records from Earth. He watched humans fighting wars, polluting their oceans, and arguing in their primitive governments. It was almost sad to see such a chaotic species. "They do show some potential," he said thoughtfully. "Their population is large, and they seem capable of basic labor. They could be useful in our outer colonies." The council nodded in agreement. The Empire always needed more workers. Their current servant species were getting expensive to maintain. "I recommend we send Admiral Kethmer," suggested Councillor Dexmirin. "This would be perfect for his newest officers. A simple pacification mission against primitives. Good training without any real danger." Emperor Vexthalen smiled. Admiral Kethmer was one of their youngest fleet commanders. He had just graduated a new class of officers who needed practical experience. A mission against helpless primitives would build their confidence. "Excellent idea," the Emperor said. "Have Kethmer take 12 dreadnoughts. That should be more than enough to overwhelm these humans completely." The council laughed at the suggestion. 12 dreadnoughts could destroy entire star systems. Against a primitive species like humanity, it was massive overkill. But it would make the mission completely safe for their young officers. 3 months later, Admiral Kethmer stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Cosmic Supremacy. Around him, 11 other massive warships prepared for the journey to the Sol system. Each dreadnought was over 2 miles long and carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Kethmer was young for an admiral, only 300 years old. His green skin was still smooth, and his 6 arms moved with the quick confidence of youth. He had studied every detail about humanity and felt completely confident. "Their most powerful weapons use explosive chemicals," he told his officers. "Their fastest ships need months to travel between planets in their own system. They have never even left their star system." The officers nodded. Several of them were barely past 100 years old, fresh from the Imperial Academy. They had studied the great conquests of the past, but had never seen real action. "What about their defenses?" asked Sub-Commander Telvora. Kethmer pulled up tactical displays showing Earth's orbital installations. "They have some space stations and satellites, but nothing that could threaten our shields. Their energy weapons are so weak, they could not scratch our armor." The fleet entered Fold Space and began the journey to Sol. It would take 2 weeks to reach the human system. Kethmer spent the time preparing the standard surrender terms. When they arrived, he planned to park his fleet just outside Earth's atmosphere. The sight of 12 Imperial dreadnoughts would terrify the primitive humans into immediate surrender. They would demand submission, and the humans would have no choice but to accept. The terms were simple. Humanity would become a client species of the Empire. They would provide workers for mining operations and farming colonies. In exchange, the Empire would protect them and gradually improve their technology. Any resistance would result in the destruction of their major cities. The Empire had perfected this process over 3,000 years. No species had ever refused their generous offer. As the fleet traveled through Fold Space, Kethmer imagined the grateful looks on human faces when they realized they were being lifted from their primitive existence. They would thank the Empire for saving them from their own violent nature. He had no way of knowing that Earth's long-range sensors had detected his fleet the moment it entered Sol system space. He also did not know that humanity had been preparing for this moment since their first probe had disappeared 47 years ago. The Empire was about to learn that their assumptions about humanity were completely wrong. Admiral Kethmer's fleet dropped out of Fold Space at the edge of the Sol system. The Admiral stood on his bridge and smiled. Ahead of him lay a yellow star with several small planets orbiting around it. The third planet was Earth, home to the primitive humans. "Begin standard approach," Kethmer ordered. "Take us to the optimal intimidation position above their planet." His 12 dreadnoughts moved forward in perfect formation. Each ship was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering. Their energy shields could stop any weapon. Their quantum armor could not be damaged by primitive technology. Their gravity cannons could tear apart entire moons. Admiral called Communications Officer Hexnala. "We are receiving a transmission from the planet. Already?" Kethmer was surprised. Most primitive species took hours to detect Imperial fleets. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered and showed a human female sitting behind a simple metal desk. She appeared to be middle-aged with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind her stood flags from many different human nations. "I am Secretary General Chun of the United Earth Council," the woman said. We know why you are here. We have prepared a response." Cathmer laughed. The United Earth Council? These humans had somehow managed to create a single government in just a few months. That was impressive for such a chaotic species. "Humans of Earth," Cathmer began, using his most commanding voice. "I am Admiral Cathmer of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately and accept Imperial protection. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your cities." Secretary General Chun looked directly at him. Her eyes showed no fear, only a strange sadness. "Admiral, we have considered your offer carefully. After much discussion among all Earth's governments, we have reached a decision." Cathmer leaned forward. This was always his favorite moment. Watching primitive species realize they had no choice but to submit. "We decline," Chun said simply. The bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years, no species had ever refused imperial terms. Cathmer stared at the human woman in shock. "You decline?" he managed to say. "That is correct," Chun replied. "We choose to fight." Cathmer felt anger rising in his chest. These primitives dared to reject the Empire's generous offer? Very well. We will demonstrate imperial power. Perhaps you will reconsider after we destroy one of your cities. "No, Admiral," Chun said sadly. "I don't think you understand. We choose to fight, and we choose to win." The transmission ended. Cathmer stared at the blank screen in amazement. The audacity of these humans was incredible. They thought they could win against Imperial dreadnoughts. "Sub-Commander Telvora," he called. "Begin approach to Earth orbit. Target their largest city for demonstration bombardment." "Yes, Admiral," Telvora replied. But as she began to input commands, warning alarms suddenly filled the bridge. "Admiral," shouted Sensor Officer Wexfin, "I'm detecting massive energy readings throughout the system." "What kind of energy?" Cathmer demanded. "Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our databases." "And Admiral, there are thousands of them." On the tactical display, red dots began appearing everywhere. They surrounded the Imperial fleet from all directions. Some were near the planets, others hung in empty space between worlds. "Are they ships?" Telvora asked. "I don't think so," Wexfin said, his voice confused. "They're too small. Each one is only about the size of a fighter craft." Cathmer studied the display. Thousands of small objects were moving toward his fleet from every direction. But they were moving at impossible speeds. "How fast are they traveling?" he asked. Wexfin checked his instruments twice before answering. "Sir, they appear to be moving at nearly the speed of light." That was impossible. No physical object could move that fast without being torn apart. Even Imperial ships could only reach a fraction of light speed. "Raise shields," Cathmer ordered. All ships, full defensive formation. The 12 dreadnoughts moved into their standard protection pattern. Their energy shields glowed bright blue as they activated. The shields could stop any energy weapon ever created. The first wave of human objects struck the lead dreadnought. Conquest of stars. 60 seconds later. Cathmer watched on his screen as tiny projectiles slammed into the ship's shields. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the shields flickered and went out. "What?" Cathmer gasped. How did their shields fail? "Admiral," Wexfin called out in panic. "Those weren't energy weapons. They were physical projectiles. Our shields are designed to stop energy beams, not solid objects." More waves of projectiles struck Conquest of Stars. Each tiny object hit with the force of an antimatter bomb. The massive dreadnought's hull began to crack under the impact. "This is impossible," Telvora shouted. "Nothing can accelerate physical matter to those speeds." But Cathmer was beginning to understand. While the Empire had spent centuries perfecting energy weapons and shield technology, humans had taken a completely different path. They had found ways to make physical projectiles move at incredible speeds. "All ships, evasive action," he ordered, but it was too late. The human weapons were everywhere. They came from above and below, from all sides at once. The Imperial ships tried to maneuver, but the projectiles anticipated their movements. Conquest of Stars exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth's surface. The other Imperial ships began taking hits as well. "Admiral," called the captain of Stellar Dominance, "our quantum armor is being penetrated. These projectiles are somehow phasing through our defenses." Kethmer realized the horrible truth. Human weapons operated on principles the Empire had never encountered. While Imperial technology focused on energy manipulation, humans had mastered something far more dangerous: kinetic physics pushed to impossible extremes. "Sir," Wexman's voice was high with fear, "I'm detecting quantum viruses in our communication systems." "Quantum viruses? That's theoretically impossible." But their computer systems were already failing. Human hackers had somehow created digital weapons that attacked the quantum level of Imperial electronics. Screens went dark across the fleet as their most advanced systems crashed. Through the chaos, Kethmer saw something that made his blood freeze. Small objects were detaching from several human projectiles. They looked like simple metal boxes, but they were moving with purpose toward his ships. "Those are suicide drones," Telvor whispered. "But our sensors can't lock onto them. They look exactly like space debris." The drones struck with devastating effect. Each one was designed to exploit a specific weakness in Imperial ship design. Some attacked life support systems. Others targeted engine cores. A few aimed for weapon systems. In 6 hours, 11 of Kethmer's 12 dreadnoughts were destroyed. His own flagship, Cosmic Supremacy, was badly damaged but still capable of full space travel. As he prepared to retreat, Secretary General Chun appeared on his screen again. She looked older now, exhausted by the battle. "Admiral Kethmer," she said quietly, "we take no pleasure in this destruction. We tried to warn you that we would fight." Kethmer stared at her in shock. "How? How did you defeat Imperial technology?" Chun smiled sadly. "You studied our wars and saw weakness. We studied our wars and learned survival. You perfected energy weapons over centuries of peace. We perfected everything else during millennia of conflict. This isn't over," Kethmer said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No," Chun agreed. "It's just beginning. Please tell your Emperor that humanity is not a primitive species. We are a species that has never learned to give up." As cosmic supremacy limped away from Earth, Kethmer began to understand the Empire's terrible mistake. They had not encountered primitives. They had found the most dangerous type of species in the galaxy, one that had been forged by constant warfare, and had just gained access to advanced technology. The survivors of his fleet jumped to fold space, carrying news that would shake the Empire to its foundation. Behind them, Earth's defensive systems powered down, and human engineers began studying the wreckage of Imperial ships. The war was just beginning. But the Empire had already lost their greatest advantage, the element of surprise. Emperor Vex Thalen stood in his throne room, staring at the tactical display that showed the remains of Admiral Kethmer's fleet. 11 dreadnoughts destroyed, hundreds of Imperial officers dead, all by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "This is impossible," he said to the assembled High Council. "Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than theirs." Admiral Kethmer, his arm in a healing brace, stepped forward. His young face looked aged by what he had witnessed. "Your Majesty, with respect, we were wrong about human technology. They don't think like us. While we perfected energy weapons, they mastered kinetic physics. while we built strong shields, they created weapons that ignore shields completely. Counselor Dexmerin slammed his 4 fists on the table. One minor victory does not make them a threat. Send the 5th and 9th fleets. 200 ships will crush these upstart humans. Yes, agreed Counselor Yenthar. We must respond with overwhelming force. Show the galaxy that no one defies the Empire. Emperor Vexthala nodded slowly. His pride had been wounded by this defeat. The Empire's reputation for invincibility was at stake. Very well. Admiral Zexcalon will lead both fleets to Sol System. Total destruction authorization is granted. But as the Emperor gave his orders, something was happening across Imperial space that he did not yet understand. Human agents had been very busy during the 3 months since first contact. Captain, Sarah Chun floated in zero gravity aboard the experimental ship Defiance. Around her, the bridge crew worked at stations that had not existed 3 months ago. Every piece of technology had been built from studying captured Imperial equipment. Jump drive ready, Captain, called Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. Quantum tunnels are stable, added Engineer Patel. We can maintain dimensional phase for 6 hours. Captain Chun smiled. Humans had not just copied Imperial foldspace technology. They had improved it. Human ships could now exist in multiple dimensions at once, making them nearly impossible to target. Take us to Kepler Station, she ordered. It's time to free our first ally. The Defiance disappeared from normal space. But unlike Imperial foldspace jumps that took hours, the human quantum tunnel opened instantly. The ship emerged in the Kepler system, home to the Altarian mining colony. For 200 years, the Altarians had served the Empire as forced laborers. They were a peaceful species of bird-like beings who had never fought back against their oppressors. That was about to change. This is Captain Chun of the Terran Liberation Fleet. She broadcast to the planet below. We come offering freedom and the weapons to achieve it. On Kepler Prime, Altarian Overseer Kethwing received the transmission with disbelief. Humans? But they were the newest slave species, barely contacted by the Empire. How did you escape? Imperial control? He asked when Chun's face appeared on his screen. We never accepted it, Chun replied simply. And neither should you. Within hours, human landing craft descended to Kepler Prime. They carried not just weapons, but something far more valuable, tactical knowledge gained from 4,000 years of human warfare. Human military advisors met with Altarian leaders in secret caves beneath the mining facilities. Major Jackson spread out battle plans on a simple table. Your oppressors expect obedience, he explained. They have never faced organized resistance. We can teach you how to turn their own strengths against them. The Altarians listened in amazement as humans described guerrilla warfare, sabotage techniques, and coordination between scattered resistance cells. Within days, the mining operation ground to a halt as Altarian workers began their rebellion. But the humans did not stop with one world. Captain Chun's ship was one of 50 that had been built in Earth's orbital shipyards. Human liberation fleets struck throughout Imperial space, always staying ahead of Imperial response forces. In the Vega system, humans helped the aquatic Dolphinians sabotage Imperial underwater cities. In the Centauri cluster, they taught the insectoid hive minds how to use their natural tunneling abilities for warfare. Most importantly, humans shared something the Empire had hidden for centuries: intercepted communications showing Imperial leaders true feelings about their subject species. Listen to this. Captain Chun broadcast to a gathering of 15 liberated species. This is Emperor Vexthalan speaking to his council 3 years ago. The recording played clearly. The client species have served their purpose, but they consume too many resources. Once our automated systems are complete, we should consider genetic modification to make them more docile, or perhaps atmospheric poisoning to reduce their populations to manageable levels. The effect was immediate and devastating. Species that had served the Empire faithfully for centuries realized they had been marked for eventual extinction. Rebellions exploded across 17 star systems simultaneously. Meanwhile, human engineers continued their impossible work. In massive orbital factories around Earth's moon, they built weapons that violated every principle of Imperial science. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the Reality Anchor project. The Empire uses fold space for everything, she explained to her team. Their ships, their communications, even their weapons. If we can prevent access to fold space in a localized area, we trap them in normal space where our kinetic weapons are superior, finished Dr. Kim, her assistant. The reality anchors were deployed throughout human space, like invisible mines. Any Imperial ship that tried to use fold space within their range would find themselves locked in normal dimensions. Dr. Vasquez also perfected the probability cascade system. Imperial weapons use quantum targeting, she told the Defense Committee. But quantum events follow mathematical rules. If we can predict and alter the probability of their weapons firing correctly. The first test was spectacular. An Imperial patrol ship fired its main cannon at a human destroyer. The quantum targeting system, infected with human probability viruses, calculated that it had a 97% chance of hitting its target. Instead, the weapon misfired and destroyed the Imperial ship's own engines. But humans saved their most devastating psychological weapon for last. Captain Chun stood before a gathering of newly liberated species and made an announcement that would shake the Empire to its core. Today, we established the Galactic Liberation Council, she declared. Any species that wishes to be free from Imperial oppression will receive human support. We will provide weapons, training, and tactical coordination. The declaration was broadcast across 1,000 worlds. Within days, Imperial outposts throughout the galaxy found themselves under attack by their own former slaves, now armed with human weapons and trained in human tactics. Emperor Vesthalan watched reports flood in from across his empire. Mining worlds in revolt. Communication networks compromised. Fleet positions revealed to rebels by captured Imperial officers who had been turned by human interrogation techniques. How is this possible? He demanded. It has been only 3 months since first contact. Admiral Kethmer, now serving as an advisor, provided the terrible answer. Your Majesty, we assumed humans were primitive because they fought constantly. But constant warfare taught them things we never learned. They know how to adapt faster than any species we have ever encountered. And, added Intelligence Officer Velanara, they understand something we forgot long ago. They know how to inspire others to fight for freedom. On the tactical display, red dots showing human activity appeared throughout Imperial space. Each dot represented a liberation fleet, a rebel world, or a sabotaged Imperial facility. Emperor Vesthalan realized with growing horror that the Empire was not facing a simple rebellion. They were confronting something far more dangerous, a species that had turned warfare into an art form, and was now teaching that art to every oppressed people in the galaxy. The Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology for 3,000 years. But humans had taken away their technological advantage and replaced fear with something much more powerful. Hope. As reports continued to arrive, showing Imperial forces in retreat throughout the galaxy, Emperor Vesthalan began to understand that his empire was dying. The humans had not just defeated one fleet. They had lit a fire that was spreading faster than Imperial forces could contain it. The war had moved beyond simple conquest. This had become a fight for the soul of the galaxy itself. Emperor Vesthalan stood alone in his private chamber, staring at the holographic display that showed his crumbling empire. Red zones marked rebel activity across half the galaxy. Yellow zones indicated worlds where Imperial control was weakening. Only a few green zones remained fully loyal. In 6 months, the humans had accomplished what no enemy had managed in 3,000 years. They had brought the Empire to the edge of collapse. "Your Majesty," came a voice from behind him. Councillor Dex Mirren entered the chamber, his forearms trembling with rage. "The High Council demands immediate action. We must use the stellar resonance engine." The Emperor turned slowly. The stellar resonance engine was the Empire's ultimate weapon, capable of destabilizing a star and causing it to explode. It had never been used in warfare, only tested on uninhabited systems. "You want to destroy an entire star system?" Vexdalen asked. "Yes," Dex Mirren replied. "We destroy Sol and every human in it. Without their leadership, the rebellions will collapse. Fear will return to the galaxy." The Emperor considered this. The weapon was mounted on their greatest dreadnought, Eternal Dominion. The ship was 5 miles long and carried enough armor to survive a direct nova blast. Once the charging process began, nothing could stop it. "Very well," he decided. "Send Eternal Dominion to Sol System. We will end this human infection once and for all." Admiral Rexther, commander of Eternal Dominion, received his orders with grim satisfaction. The humans had embarrassed the Empire enough. It was time to show the galaxy what happened to species that defied Imperial will. "Holly, set course for Sol System," he ordered from his massive command bridge. "Maximum forward space speed. We end this today." Eternal Dominion was unlike any other Imperial ship. Its hull was made from compressed neutron matter. Its shields could deflect entire asteroid fields. Most importantly, it carried the stellar resonance engine in its heavily protected center section. The weapon itself was a marvel of Imperial science. It worked by sending quantum resonance waves into a star's core, disrupting the delicate balance that kept nuclear fusion stable. Once the process began, the star would collapse and explode within hours. "Admiral," called Science Officer Hex Myra, "we are detecting human ships throughout the Sol System." "How many?" Rexther asked. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors show contradictory readings. Some areas appear empty but register massive energy signatures. Other areas show ships that our targeting systems cannot lock onto." Rexther was not concerned. Eternal Dominion was too powerful for any human weapon to damage. "Take us to optimal firing position. Begin charging the stellar resonance engine." The massive ship moved into position above Sol's North Pole. Here, the star's magnetic field was weakest, allowing the resonance waves to penetrate more easily. Deep in the ship's core, the weapon began its charging process. Quantum energy collectors gathered power from the ship's fusion reactors. The process would take 17 hours to complete, during which time the ship had to remain perfectly still. "All stop," Rexther ordered. "Begin 17-hour countdown." On Earth, President Martinez stood in the Emergency Command Center watching Eternal Dominion position itself above Sol. Around her, military leaders from every human nation worked together at a single bank of computers. Dr. Vasquez. Status report. The President called. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her display. "The nanites have been in place for 4 months, Madam President. We started seeding Sol's core the day after first contact. And they're invisible to Imperial sensors?" "Completely. Each nanite is smaller than an atom. They use quantum tunneling to move through the star's matter without affecting local physics. The Empire's sensors detect nothing unusual." General Harrison leaned over the tactical display. "Ma'am, Eternal Dominion is the most powerful ship ever built. Even if we stop their weapon, we can't penetrate their defenses with conventional attacks." "We won't need to," President Martinez replied. "Dr. Chen, is the construct ready?" Dr. Sarah Chun, daughter of the late Secretary General Chun, nodded grimly. "The Phantom Fortress is in position. It's been there for 2 weeks, waiting. On the display, the area around Eternal Dominion looked like empty space. Imperial sensors detected nothing but cosmic background radiation and distant starlight. But hidden in that apparently empty void was humanity's greatest engineering achievement. The Phantom Fortress was a single structure larger than Earth's moon. It existed in a state of quantum phase that made it undetectable to normal sensors. Its construction had taken every major industrial nation working together for 5 months. How long until their weapon fires? President Martinez asked. 16 hours 53 minutes, Dr. Vasquez replied. Inside Eternal Dominion, Admiral Rexter watched the charging process with satisfaction. Quantum energy levels were rising steadily. In less than 17 hours, Sol would become a supernova, and the human threat would end forever. Admiral called Communications Officer Yexhana. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through, Rexter ordered. He wanted to watch the humans beg for mercy. President Martinez appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with steel gray hair and determined eyes. Behind her stood representatives from every human nation. Admiral Rexter, she began. I am President Martinez of the United Earth Government. We know why you are here. Then you know your species has less than 17 hours to live, Rexter replied coldly. Actually, Admiral, I think you misunderstand the situation, Martinez said calmly. We've been studying Imperial technology for 6 months. We know exactly how your weapon works. Rexter laughed. Knowing how it works will not save you. Nothing can stop the stellar resonance engine once it begins charging. You're right, Martinez agreed. We can't stop your weapon from firing. But you're making the same mistake your empire has made from the beginning. What mistake is that? Martinez smiled sadly. You assume we think like you do. Admiral, we've known about stellar manipulation technology since your first probe arrived. Do you really think we would leave our star unprotected? Rexter felt a chill of uncertainty. What are you talking about? Show him, Martinez said to someone off-screen. The display changed to show a cross-section of Sol. Throughout the star's core, billions of tiny lights pulsed in perfect synchronization. Nanobots, Dr. Vasquez explained via audio link. 13 billion of them, each smaller than a proton. They've been maintaining Sol's stability for months. Your resonance weapon will fire correctly, Admiral, but it won't destabilize our star. Rexter stared at the impossible display. That's not possible. No species has that level of nanotechnology. No Imperial species, Martinez corrected. Admiral, your people spent centuries perfecting weapons of destruction. We spent millennia learning to survive. Sometimes survival means protecting the very thing that gives you life. As if to prove her point, the tactical display updated to show Sol's energy output. Despite Eternal Dominion's weapon charging above it, the star remained perfectly stable. Impossible, Rexter shouted. Our science shows this cannot be done. Your science never had to deal with a species that learned to improvise under pressure, Martinez replied. Admiral, look around your ship. Really look. Rexter ordered his sensor operators to scan the surrounding space more carefully. For several minutes, they found nothing. Then, slowly, an impossible truth began to emerge. Admiral, Sensor Officer Pexhara said in a trembling voice, I'm detecting artificial structures throughout the surrounding area. They're everywhere. The main display updated to show the truth. Eternal Dominion was not floating in empty space. It was sitting in the center of a vast artificial construct that had been invisible to Imperial sensors. The Phantom Fortress, President Martinez explained. It's been here for weeks, waiting for you. Your ship is completely surrounded, Admiral. Rexter realized the horrible truth. The humans had not tried to stop the Empire's ultimate weapon. Instead, They had allowed it to enter a trap that was beyond Imperial technology to detect or understand. "This is impossible," he whispered. "How did you build something that large without our sensors detecting it?" "The same way we've done everything else," Martinez replied. "We thought differently than you do. While your people perfected individual technologies, we learned to combine multiple sciences in ways you never considered." As Rexter watched, sections of the invisible construct began to solidify around his ship. Gradually, he could see the truth. Eternal Dominion was trapped inside a structure so massive it defied comprehension. "What do you want?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Your complete surrender," Martinez said simply. "Your weapon, your ship, and your crew, all intact. In return, your people will live." Rexter looked at his tactical display. His ship was trapped. His ultimate weapon was useless. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he began to understand what the rest of the Empire was only beginning to realize. Humanity had not just defeated them. Humanity had made them obsolete. 1 year after first contact, Emperor Vexthalen sat in a simple metal chair in what had once been his throne room. The crystal dome above him was cracked. The compressed starlight throne had been dismantled. The symbols of imperial power were gone. Across from him sat President Martinez and representatives from 47 liberated species. The table between them held a single document, the Articles of Dissolution that would formally end the Zephyrian Empire. "Your Majesty," President Martinez said quietly, "this doesn't have to be the end. It can be a beginning." Vexthalen looked up at the human leader. Over the past months, he had come to understand that humans were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They showed mercy to defeated enemies. They offered cooperation instead of domination. "You could have destroyed us completely," he said. "Why didn't you?" Martinez glanced at the other representatives around the table. The bird-like Altarians, the aquatic Dolphinians, the insectoid hive minds, all species that had been enslaved by the Empire for centuries. "Because destruction is easy," she replied. "Building something better is hard. We've learned that lesson through thousands of years of our own wars." Behind the Emperor stood Admiral Rexter and the remnants of the Imperial leadership. After the capture of Eternal Dominion, Imperial resistance had collapsed within weeks. Not because they couldn't fight, but because they had nothing left to fight for. The rebellion had spread to every corner of Imperial space. Species that had served faithfully for centuries had learned the truth about Imperial plans for their eventual extinction. Loyalty had turned to anger overnight. The Empire lasted 3,000 years, Counselor Dex Mirren said bitterly. Humans destroyed it in less than 12 months. "No," corrected Dr. Sarah Chung, who sat beside President Martinez. "You destroyed it yourselves. We just showed everyone what you really were." The evidence was overwhelming. In the captured Imperial archives, humans had found detailed plans for the gradual elimination of client species. Genetic modification programs to make them more docile. Atmospheric poisoning schemes to reduce populations. Forced sterilization of entire worlds. "Your empire was built on a lie," President Martinez continued. "You told client species they needed protection, but you were the greatest threat they faced." Emperor Vexthalen knew she was right. The Empire had become so focused on control that they had forgotten the principles that had built their civilization. Fear had replaced cooperation. Domination had replaced partnership. "What happens now?" he asked. Martinez gestured to the other representatives. "The Galactic Confederation. 47 species working together as equals. No emperors, no subjects. Just partners trying to build something better. And humans will lead this confederation?" Admiral Rexter asked suspiciously. "No," Martinez replied firmly. "That's the point. Not a single species leads. We govern together, decide together, succeed or fail together. This concept was difficult for imperial minds to understand. They had ruled for so long that the idea of sharing power seemed impossible. But around the table, Vexthalen could see it working. Species that had been enemies were cooperating. Former slaves sat as equals with their liberators. Kethwing, the Altarian representative, leaned forward. "Your Majesty, we do not seek revenge. We seek justice. The humans have taught us that these are different things." "Justice means the Empire ends," added the Dolphinian delegate through her translation device. "But it also means former Imperial citizens can join the Confederation as equals if they choose peace over domination." Emperor Vexthalen looked at the document before him. His signature would end 3,000 years of Imperial history. But refusing to sign would accomplish nothing. Imperial forces were scattered or had already joined local rebellions. Imperial territories were already forming their own governments. "If I sign this," he said slowly, "what becomes of my people? The Zephyrians who never participated in the Empire's crimes." President Martinez nodded to Dr. Chun, who pulled out another document. "The Zephyr Accords. Your home system becomes an independent member of the Confederation. Your people keep their technology, their culture, their freedom. But the Empire ends forever. And former Imperial officers?" Admiral Rexter asked. "Truth and reconciliation hearings," replied Ambassador Torres, the human diplomatic representative. "Those who committed war crimes face justice. Those who are following orders can serve in the new Confederation forces if they accept democratic principles." Vexthalen realized this was more mercy than the Empire had ever shown to defeated enemies. Throughout Imperial history, conquered species had been enslaved or eliminated. "Never offered partnership. Why?" he asked. "Why show such generosity to your enemies?" Martinez was quiet for a moment, then answered, "Because we learned something your empire forgot. Today's enemy can become tomorrow's ally, but only if you give them reason to choose friendship over revenge." Around the table, representatives from dozens of species nodded in agreement. These beings had been enemies months ago, fighting each other under imperial manipulation. Now they worked together toward common goals. "Besides," added Dr. Chun with a slight smile, "we've seen what Zephyrian engineering can accomplish when it's not focused on weapons of war. Your agricultural systems could feed billions. Your medical technology could eliminate diseases that plague half the galaxy." This was true. Imperial science had achieved remarkable things during their peaceful periods. But for the past 1,000 years, almost all research had been directed toward military applications. Emperor Vexthalen picked up the stylus and held it over the articles of dissolution. Around him, his advisors watched in silence. Some looked angry, others relieved. "The Zephyrian Empire formally surrenders to the Galactic Confederation," he said as he signed the document. "May the galaxy find the peace that we could not provide." President Martinez signed next, followed by each of the 47 species representatives. When it was done, the empire that had ruled nearly 1,000 star systems was officially dissolved. "What will you do now?" Martinez asked the former emperor. Vexthalen stood up slowly. At over 800 years old, he was tired in ways that sleep could not cure. "I will return to Zephyr Prime and help my people transition to democracy." "It will not be easy for them, or for any of us," agreed the Altarian representative. "Democracy is harder than empire, but it's also better." As the former imperial leadership prepared to leave, Admiral Rexter approached President Martinez. "I must ask," he said quietly, "how did you predict our strategy so accurately? You countered every move we made." Martinez smiled sadly. "Admiral, you studied our wars and saw chaos. We studied our wars and learned patterns. Every strategy your empire used we had seen before in our own history. We knew how empires think because we had defeated many empires in our own world. And more importantly, added Dr. Chun, we understood something your empire never learned. The most powerful weapon isn't technology or force. It's hope. When you give people hope for something better, they become unstoppable. As the meeting concluded and representatives began to leave, President Martinez remained behind with her advisors. The galaxy was free from imperial rule, but the real work was just beginning. "Ma'am," said General Harrison, "establishing a working government with 47 species isn't going to be easy. Different biology, different psychology, different needs." "No," Martinez agreed. "It won't be easy, but that's what makes it worthwhile. Easy things don't change the galaxy." Dr. Sarah Chun pulled up a holographic display showing the former imperial territories. "The good news is that most systems are already forming local democratic governments. The humans who served as military advisors are helping establish fair elections." "And the former imperial fleet?" asked Ambassador Torres. "Many officers have requested to join Confederation forces," replied General Harrison. "After psychological evaluation and retraining in democratic principles, some of them might become valuable allies." President Martinez nodded. It would take time to heal the wounds left by 3,000 years of imperial rule. Some species would struggle with the transition to self-governance. Others might try to establish their own small empires. But humanity had given the galaxy something it had never truly possessed: a choice. The choice between cooperation and domination, between fear and hope, between the security of slavery and the risks of freedom. Looking up at the cracked dome above the former throne room, Martinez could see stars that were no longer controlled by any empire. Each light represented worlds where beings could now determine their own futures. The Zephyrian Empire had thought humanity was weak because they fought constantly among themselves. They had not understood that those fights had taught humans the most important lesson in the galaxy: how to turn enemies into friends, how to build something better from the ashes of what came before. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, President Martinez took one last look around the former center of imperial power. Tomorrow, this building would become the headquarters of the Galactic Confederation, a place where 47 species would work together as equals. The empire had fallen not because humanity was strong, but because humanity understood something the empire had forgotten. The true strength comes not from ruling others, but from helping them rule themselves.